Austan, your thoughts both on the housing starts number, but also the jobless claims number that came in.
You know, all those numbers sound gruesome to me. And this is from March, where almost 2 weeks were supposed to be semi-normal. So it feels like that we have answered today the question for unemployment. Was there just going to be a backlog of people who had not yet processed through the system, or are there still millions of people continuing to lose their jobs? And I think with a number like this, it means people are continuing to lose their jobs.
Is there an end in sight, Austan? I guess as you start talking about opening the country again, opening the country for business. Look, it may not all open at one time. We may be talking about gradually, but you think things start to look up a couple of weeks from now, a month from now, 2 months from now? What's your best take?
You know, if we don't do the testing, which the business leaders that advised the president yesterday said, before we can open, we've got to do a lot more testing. And if you look around the world, we now have some successful models of economies that have gotten out of lockdown. Korea's not in lockdown. Taiwan's not in lockdown. If you look at Iceland, New Zealand, now in Germany, that path that you do enough testing so that the only people that have to go out of commission are the people who get the disease, that's the way forward. I can't understand why we're not talking about that. We're just pressing ahead, it feels like, to say, well, let's just all go back out. These March numbers, we had record lows for retail sales that came in yesterday. We've got awful housing numbers. We got awful unemployment numbers. They should be sobering to anybody who says we should just reopen the economy, because much of that damage in the month of March happened before there were any shutdown orders. They show you that the reason that the economy is going into shutdown mode is because people are afraid of getting the virus, and you have to do testing and you have to do prevention if you want to get out of lockdown.
Michael, what's the AEI perspective on that?
Well, there is a lot of mixed views at AEI. I mean, my perspective is that this is terrible. I think you could try and put a positive spin on this and say that a smaller number of initial claims suggests that there may have been a big wave of initial layoffs when the shutdown orders happened, and maybe we're kind of over that hump. But even if we're over that hump, we're nowhere near down to a reasonable level. Even a reasonable level for an economic calamity. I mean, this is just really, really bad. I think this suggests the need to, really have policies in place that can keep workers attached to their employers, and that can allow for employers to quickly hire back workers. Of course, the Paycheck Protection Program attempts to do that. It's running out of money. That is a scandal that Congress can't just appropriate some additional funding for that, because that program really is structured to stem these kinds of losses. I mean, I began my remarks with some good news. There may, of course, be bad news. These are initial claims for unemployment insurance for people who are successful at processing that claim. A lot of state UI systems are really overwhelmed right now. And so the actual number of people who are trying to get unemployment benefits may be much, much higher than, several million higher than what we've seen over the last 3 or 4 weeks. And so we just desperately need public policy to step up here and try and keep the unemployment rate as low as possible, so that when we do reopen, and I hope that we start to reopen relatively soon, at least begin the process of reopening, the unemployment rate doesn't need to come down 20 percentage points, because it didn't get that high in the first place.
David, let's talk about how long you think this is going to last. We've had a couple of voices on the show this morning, and important voices who really understand what's happening beneath the surface. That would be Larry Fink and Barry Diller, who seem to suggest that they think this is going to last quite a bit longer. Barry Diller talked about how at Expedia they traditionally will spend $5 billion a year on advertising. This year, he says, they'll spend less than $1 billion, and that ripples through the rest of the economy. How do you see this playing out? How long do you see this lasting?
Well, I think that what Barry Diller and Larry Fink said is exactly right, which is that we're talking about a period of time between now and when that vaccine becomes widely available, and that could be anywhere from 18 to 24 months. And between now and then, we actually don't have effective treatments for the disease, and therefore all of the testing and tracking that people have been talking about today is absolutely essential in order for us to begin to turn the economy back on. So the question that you're asking, I think, Becky, is to the degree that the markets actually have baked this in, right? We're going to end up, the Citi Private Bank thinks we're going to end up with an unemployment rate of somewhere between 20 and 25% for a brief period of time. And then the question is, how fast does that come back? We recently ran a model looking at this data, and it looks to us that it takes 9 quarters for us to get back to where we were in the first quarter of this year, of 2020, in terms of GDP. So it's quite a bit of runway between here and there. The thing that gives us confidence that we can get to that, back to that very slowly, is the amount of money that the government is pumping into benefits for individuals, and also the fact that the testing and tracking that we're talking about actually takes place. And so I think that the market is actually, in one sense, being a little bit too generous in our ability to actually do that right now. On the other hand, we are talking about a disease that has a finite end once that vaccine actually is created and delivered. So I think those are the two things that are taking place in the market right now. And I would argue that it's probably a little bit optimistic right now in terms of what's actually priced into the market.